Hi everyone, my name is Cheryl and this is my Happy Handcraft Studio. Welcome. Today is a special episode. This is a quilting only episode and I'll be talking about orphan blocks and the different projects that we can make from them. What is an orphan block? An orphan block is an extra block that you might have made to test a pattern. Or it could be blocks that you created for a project that you ended up not needing, or you didn't like them in the finished product. It can be one block, or it could be a series of blocks. And when I went through my own stash of blocks, I have a bin that I keep that has all my orphan blocks in it. And when the bin gets full, it's time to make up some projects. But it's also a really good exercise in seeing what ends up in the orphan block box. So when I looked through, I found that I had a lot of test pieces. So this, I remember Jenny Doan, Missouri Star Quilt Company, she talked about that every day she puts crumbs together. This is how she warms up with her stitching. I was at a local quilt show and Carol's Quilts showed some different ways of using scraps. And so I had some pieces. Now I did use 4 of them in this quilt and I like how it looked. Calgary's Modern Quilt Guild had a tutorial with a technique, and so I made a couple of blocks there, so that was in my stash. During COVID, I attended an online quilt program, and they were doing the International Sisters block for one of their sessions, and so I have, 3 great blocks with some of our international ladies. So they were in there. Now Jan might recognize this. We were doing our water quilt and we had a mariner's star in the middle. I was too afraid to cut a hole in my quilt and put a star in, so I did a practice one. And once I did my practice, then I was confident that I could do it in my quilt. So I have this block that I can use. Sometimes we have great intentions. We see a pattern and we think, I love it. I'm going to make all 20, 30, 40 blocks. And so one of our local quilters, Janet Barker, had this great pattern that she did at, I think, CQA Vancouver. And several of us here took her workshop to help her kind of see how the timing that it would be. And I loved the blocks. It was interesting to do. But it technically, there was a lot to remember. And so I didn't get it all finished at one time. And to go back and try to figure out where I was, I decided this was enough blocks. I'll make something out of it. And, I am a Ujamagramma, and in the quilt part, we often have magazines. And so there was this magazine with a block, with some different hand piece blocks, and in the magazine there was also one block. So no idea why this maker thought that one was enough, but it's a beautiful block and I'm hoping to turn that into something. So lots of different reasons to have blocks. So now, what do we do with these blocks? We want to use them. I was just at another quilt guild session where we talked about the environmental impact of fabric. And if we have this fabric just sitting in our homes, taking up space, it's not really environmentally friendly. We need to get them finished and get them out into the world. And so what do we do to get these out into the world? So we can make mug rugs. Simple, easy project. It takes one block or a couple of blocks, and you have something that's useful for your home or to give to friends with a birthday card or something like that. Placemats. Placemats can have just one main block in them, or you can put several blocks in. And we have charities like Meals on Wheels that are always asking for placemats. If you have a series of blocks, you could make them into table runners. Pot holders, again, a great way to use some of these individual blocks. I can never have enough pin cushions. I love to have pin cushions by my sewing table. I like to have pin cushions where I do my slow stitching. So a block makes a really great pin cushion. Now, if you have a block that you think is really eye-catching, you could frame it. You could have some that are for the seasons. You could have, a Christmas block that you put up during the Christmas season. You can also frame them in hoops. And I know if you come to a Ujamagrama fabric and yarn sale, we have hoops. Very inexpensive because we get so many of them. We can also make pillows, like that one block that I just showed you with the hand-stitched petals. That would make a beautiful pillow. Bags. So bags are another great way to incorporate some of these blocks. The block could be the pocket on a tote bag, or it could be a main part of a small bag. I thought this was a great idea for a Christmas stocking. We often have, the odd Christmas blocks left behind. We could incorporate them into a stocking with some other fabrics. And then finally, quilts. There are some really great ways to put orphan blocks into quilts. Now, some people will use the orphan blocks on the back of their quilt. So they piece them into the backing and use them up that way. As some people use the orphan blocks as the major feature of their quilt. Now, I was doing research for this presentation, and I was on a Quilting Life blog, and Sherry had a really great suggestion. If you do a lot of test blocks, that whenever you're doing a test block, use a specific theme of either colors or season. So, for example, if you did all of your test blocks with Christmas fabric, then these blocks could be used and put together in a cohesive manner into a Christmas quilt or Christmas projects. Maybe you always have lots of red. Well, you could make all of your blocks with red in them, and at the end have a great quilt that featured red. Some really great ideas, and I know a lot of you have used orphan blocks in the backs of your quilt. You've used them to make quilt labels. There's lots of really great things that we can do with these blocks. So why bother? We toss them to the side. We think we're going to use them. Well, why did we decide that this year it would be a challenge for our guild? And I think the most important aspect is it makes us use our brain in a different way. How are we going to put these blocks together so that we end up with a finished project? we can risk. We can do things that we normally wouldn't do because basically it's a free block. We can ink stamp it. We can slow stitch on it. We can cut it all apart and sew it back together again because we have that freedom. I think another real advantage of using an orphan block or orphan blocks in a project is that we can get it done quickly. And if you are always working on big quilts, they sometimes can be a burden. Like there's so much to do and it takes so much time. But if you choose to do a small project with just a few blocks, you can get it done. And the sense of satisfaction of being able to get something done is wonderful. So you're going to get some orphan blocks, either ones that you have at home, or you're going to go to our orphan block table and choose some blocks. You're going to make a project, you're going to do some research, decide how you want to put these blocks together. You're going to enter them into the Guild Challenge. Now, I don't think there's a limit of how many projects you can put in. I think if you did 10 projects, enter 10 projects, because we'll be able to see just the variety of ways that we can use orphan blocks. Now, when the challenge is over, what do you do with them? Well, use them in your home, give them to family and friends, and so many of us have organizations that always need handcraft items for church bazaars, for ujamagrammas, and for other charity events. I mean, there is always a place for these finished objects. So, I hope you're inspired to try some of these ideas, and I really look forward to seeing what you come up with. Thanks, everyone.